talk about the preposterous notion that Donald Trump believes he has any leverage over Vladimir Putin. I don't know what Trump thinks his role is here. He has tried to distance himself from the Russian-Ukrainian conflict by saying that had he been president in 2020, had he won the 2020 election and been president in 2021, that this war would never have happened. He wouldn't have allowed it to happen. And Vladimir Putin, I think, in an effort to stroke Donald Trump's ego, has insinuated the same thing, except that's not the case. I mean, let's be honest. This is Donald Trump's war. The troop movement that the Russians were doing back in the spring of 2021 is because of policies enacted by the United States regarding Ukraine during Donald Trump's presidency. Let's never forget that it was under Donald Trump in 2017 that the U.S. Army began training in Western Ukraine, 1 battalion of Ukrainian troops every 55 days for the stated purpose of going east to fight the Russians to liberate the Donbass. That was the mission of the American forces. Under Donald Trump, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Javelin missiles, Stinger missiles, and other military equipment were provided to Ukraine. Under Donald Trump, Russia was subjected to stringent economic sanctions because of their reaction to the right-wing banderist Nazis seizing power in February 2014 and attempting to eradicate the Russian-speaking populations of Crimea and the Donbass. Under Donald Trump, the fraud of Minsk was continued, was perpetrated. Donald Trump knew that Angela Merkel and Francois Hollande and then later Emmanuel Macron weren't serious about going forward with Minsk. He knew that it was a sham. He knew that it was simply to buy time so that he, Donald Trump, could train the Ukrainian army to fight the Russians. And so Donald Trump, it lives in a never land. The Russians know damn well what he did. They know his role, and they know that he can't be trusted. But they also know another thing, that Russia has won this war, and that Russia will win this war, no matter what the United States or Europe or NATO does. There's nothing the United States, Europe, or NATO can do to change this outcome. Even direct military intervention. NATO is incapable.
Below is an in-depth exploration of the key themes and insights from the discussion, expanding on the summary provided. Scott Ritter critiques Donald Trump's proposed peace plan for Ukraine, arguing that it is fundamentally flawed due to its reliance on Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's involvement. Ritter points out that Russia has categorically dismissed Zelensky as a legitimate negotiating partner, rendering Trump's plan unrealistic. This critique highlights a broader issue in U.S. foreign policy, the tendency to propose solutions without fully understanding or acknowledging the perspectives of other key players in the conflict. Ritter asserts that Trump's approach reflects a naive understanding of the geopolitical realities in Eastern Europe, particularly Russia's security concerns and its determination to protect its interests in the region. Ritter also emphasizes that Trump's peace plan overlooks the historical context of U.S. involvement in Ukraine. During Trump's presidency, the U.S. provided significant military aid to Ukraine, which Ritter argues laid the groundwork for the current conflict. This military support, while intended to bolster Ukraine's defenses, may have inadvertently escalated tensions with Russia, contributing to the outbreak of war. Ritter's analysis suggests that any viable peace plan must address the root causes of the conflict, including Russia's security demands and the historical grievances between the two nations. One of the most striking points in the discussion is Ritter's assertion that Russia is winning the war in Ukraine. He highlights the stark disparity in combat effectiveness between Russian and Ukrainian forces, with Ukrainian troops suffering devastating casualties. Ritter notes that a significant number of Ukrainian soldiers are being killed or captured due to a lack of manpower and resources. This grim reality underscores the human cost of the protracted conflict, which has resulted in immense suffering for the Ukrainian people. Ritter's assessment of Russia's military superiority challenges the narrative often presented in Western media, which tends to focus on Ukrainian resilience and Western support. While Ukraine has received substantial military aid from the U.S. and its allies, Ritter argues that this support has not been sufficient to counter Russia's tactical advantages. He suggests that the U.S. and its allies may need to reassess their strategies in Ukraine, as continued support for a losing battle could lead to further loss of life and resources. Ritter also critiques Trump's proposed economic measures, such as lowering oil prices to undermine the Russian economy. He argues that this approach is based on misconceptions about the Russian economy and its ability to withstand external pressures. Ritter explains that Russia's diverse extraction capabilities and its ability to sustain itself at lower oil prices make it resilient to such measures. This misjudgment, he warns, could have unintended consequences for U.S. economic stability, particularly if it leads to fluctuations in global energy markets. The discussion of Russia's economic resilience ties into broader themes of global power dynamics. Ritter suggests that the U.S. has overestimated the effectiveness of economic sanctions as a tool of foreign policy. While sanctions have been a cornerstone of U.S. strategy in dealing with adversarial nations, Ritter's analysis indicates that they may not be as effective as policymakers believe, particularly against countries like Russia that have developed strategies to mitigate their impact. The conversation extends beyond the conflict in Ukraine to explore the broader implications for global geopolitics. Ritter highlights the growing influence of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, as a significant challenge to U.S. dominance. He points out that Russia and China in particular have made significant advancements in military technology and economic cooperation, which are reshaping the global balance of power. Ritter's analysis suggests that the U.S. is increasingly isolated in its approach to international relations. While the U.S. continues to rely on traditional alliances such as NATO and the European Union, other nations are gravitating toward new alliances that challenge Western hegemony. This shift is particularly evident in the economic sphere, where BRICS nations are working to reduce their reliance on the U.S. dollar and create alternative financial systems. Ritter warns that the U.S. must adapt to this changing landscape or risk losing its position as a global superpower. Other regional conflicts, particularly Israel's military operations against Hamas. Ritter argues that Israel, like Ukraine, is facing significant challenges in maintaining its military dominance. He suggests that Israel's inability to defeat Hamas highlights the complexities of regional conflicts and the potential for escalated violence. This comparison underscores the broader theme of shifting power dynamics and the challenges faced by traditional powers in maintaining their influence. Ritter's analysis of Israel's military operations also touches on the limitations of advanced defense systems, such as the Iron Dome. He argues that these systems are unlikely to be effective against sophisticated missile threats, particularly from adversaries like Russia. This reflects a broader concern about the U.S.'s ability to defend itself and its allies in an increasingly complex global security environment. Throughout the discussion, Ritter emphasizes the need for the U.S. to reassess its military strategies in light of the advancements made by Russia and China. He points out that the U.S. is falling behind in developing effective countermeasures to the new technologies being deployed by its adversaries. This includes not only advancements in missile technology, but also in areas such as cyber warfare and artificial intelligence. Ritter's critique of U.S. military strategies is particularly relevant in the context of the conflict in Ukraine. He argues that the U.S. must move beyond its reliance on traditional military aid and sanctions and develop more nuanced approaches to dealing with adversarial nations. This includes a greater emphasis on diplomacy and a willingness to engage with the security concerns of other nations, even those that are traditionally viewed as adversaries. The conversation concludes with a reflection on the fragility of global alliances and the future of U.S. foreign policy. Ritter suggests that the U.S. is at a crossroads, facing the challenge of adapting to a rapidly changing global landscape. He warns that if the U.S. continues to pursue policies based on outdated assumptions and strategies, it risks further isolation and a decline in its global influence. Ritter's analysis highlights the need for a more pragmatic and realistic approach to foreign policy, one that takes into account the shifting dynamics of global power. This includes a greater emphasis on multilateralism and a willingness to engage with emerging powers on equal terms. Ritter's insights serve as a call to action for U.S. policymakers to rethink their strategies and adapt to the realities of the 21st century. The live-stream discussion between Danny Hong and Scott Ritter provides a thought-provoking analysis of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and its broader implications for global geopolitics. Ritter's critique of Trump's proposed peace plan, his assessment of Russia's military superiority, and his analysis of the evolving global power dynamics offer valuable insights into the challenges facing the U.S. and its allies. The conversation underscores the need for a reassessment of U.S. foreign policy and military strategies in light of the advancements made by Russia and China, as well as the growing influence of BRICS nations. Ultimately, Ritter's analysis serves as a reminder of the complexities of international relations and the importance of adapting to a rapidly changing world.